Now, this is a gentleman called Dr. Michael Mosley, who did a program recently on television, a Horizon program. Don't know whether any of you saw it. I think it's still available actually on the internet. I did have a look. I won't dwell too long on this because a lot of you were nodding then as though you probably did see it. His premise was that he quite likes his meat. He likes his bacon, he likes his sausages, he likes his steaks. He has a young daughter. His wife is also a doctor, and she was beginning to say, actually, I think we probably should be eating rather less meat. So he somehow managed to persuade the BBC to let him do a documentary about this. And he decided that for 1 month, he would eat around 140 grams of meat every day. Now, the guidelines vary a bit around the world, but the general guidelines are that we probably shouldn't eat more than about 450, 460 grams of meat per week if we want to eat meat. So that's around about 60 or 70 grams a day. It's not very much actually if you look at that. And he decided he was going to eat twice that for a month. So before he started, he had his blood pressure checked, he had his body fat checked, he had his cholesterol checked and so on. And for a month he ate 140 grams of meat every day. Now, in amongst all that, oh, that's slightly out of place actually because, sorry, that's Bill Gates coming on the act of plant-based foods. During this program, he went to America and he met 3 people who were all spent more or less a lifetime investigating human diets, and in particular the inclusion of meat. And this gentleman, Dr. Walter Willett, as you can see there, he's a pretty high power Harvard professor. He's regarded as the world's expert, #1 expert, most knowledgeable researcher on human diet. And basically he asked him about eating meat, and he said, well, he thought it was probably okay to eat meat, but not every day. And he said, well, how often? He said, well, maybe special occasions. Well, how often would that be? And he very reluctantly said, well, maybe once a month. I think he really thought that was too often. So here's a guy who knows more about human nutrition probably than anybody else. He's the most cited clinical scientist in the world in terms of research papers and so on, and he doesn't eat meat, although he thinks it's probably okay to eat it occasionally. I thought that was a very interesting conclusion. When he came to the end of his program, he was horrified to discover that after a month his blood pressure had gone up significantly. His cholesterol level had only risen slightly, but his body fat content had gone up massively just after 1 month. And he was quite shocked by that. It didn't stop him eating meat, I don't think, but that was quite interesting in a way. So there's a lot of people out there saying, actually, we should really be getting away from eating meat and other animal products. There's also the sort of environmental point of view. There's a lot of concern about the environmental effects of raising cattle, sheep, pigs, etc. This thing in the background is what they have in America called CAFOs. Have you come across those? They're called concentrated animal feed operations, and these are cattle. Now, in these places, you get probably tens of thousands of cattle, not a blade of grass in sight. They're all being fed with these lorries bringing high protein foods for them. They're riddled with disease. You know, they're constantly being administered with antibiotics and so on. These things are horrendous. There's a really good film that was put free onto YouTube called Home. I would recommend watching it. It's got quite a bit about these on Home. It's called Home because it's all about the planet Earth being our home, and actually it's all about what we're doing to it. I've taught biology for most of my life, and I'm always very conscious that when you start talking about human effects on the environment, it's very difficult not to sound like, it's all doom and gloom, really. And I know school students are fed up of hearing about the greenhouse effect and acid rain and global warming and so on, but I'm afraid it's a fact of life, really. So from an environmental point of view, it does make a lot of sense to grow plants and not animals. The other thing I've come to realise is, there's a much wider range of plant-based nutrition available than most people realise. And I think that's a very important part of this. I mean, when I decided to change, and I think when you do make those sorts of decisions, you kind of research it a little bit more. And I've added an awful lot of stuff to my diet that I didn't have before. And I think that's part of it as well. I mean, the issue is, are animal products bad for us? Well, clearly they're not disastrous because most people eat them. They may not be that good for us. But are there more positive benefits from only eating plant stuff and eating plant material from a wider range? I mean, again, there's lots of stuff like this, in literature, on the internet, pointing out that there are lots of plant materials which will provide you with fantastic sources of minerals and vitamins and nutrients, and that you don't need to be resorting to animal products to get them. These are just a couple that I've found recently. I'm not going to go through this, but beetroot, there were a load of stuff, on the previous one.